It seems that Games Workshop is indeed giving us a new unit of boys, but it's not going to directly invalidate the old ones. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today Games Workshop seems to be going quite heavy on the new model previews. We already got those sinister and disturbing demons of Slaanesh that I made a video about a second ago, and no sooner have I done making that than they're already showing off these new Beast Snagga Boyz. Absolutely love the model. I don't think I'd like to be a guardsman trying to take this guy on in close combat, so let's take a look at what we know about them. First up, there were certainly rumours of a new boys kit for quite a while now. We got some previews right at the start of 9th edition. Most of the other previews were for sort of lieutenant style figures for their various factions, though the bits of the one that we saw for the Orks did look kind of plain, with fairly standard issue war gear, making people speculate that there might be a new boys kit. Now at least certain parts of this preview weren't on this individual model that we've seen. It might be on another Beast Snagga Boy model, or it might even be an HQ choice, but who really cares too much right now, but we know that this new kit of boys is a thing. Perhaps most interestingly is that they're actually branding these Beast Snagga Boyz, kind of the grunt troops who prefer fighting on their own 2 feet, alongside the Beast Snagga forces, who as we know from their lore tend to ride great big squig beasties. As is often the fluff with more feral or savage orcs, they tend to be a bit bigger and stronger than their brethren, just because they're constantly fighting in a short and brutal life. They would fit in very well with the snake bites, as would all of the Beast Snaggas, but apparently they will be sort of like a specialist mob within the greater orc army, much like tank busters or commandos, each of which can find their homes in multiple clans. They're kind of expanding on the idea of orc fixations, and these are the ones who like herding, killing and riding beasts. They've given us a few interesting hints as to how the unit will function. They're not going to be as durable as a Nob apparently, despite being a bit bigger than standard boys, but crucially they do say that they'll be swinging their choppers just as hard as a Nob. Now Nobs are strength 5, so it makes sense that these guys might be strength 5 in combat. I have to admit that chain-bladed chopper looks fairly vicious as well. I wouldn't be too surprised if we did see AP-1 on these guys as well. I'd say as they're branded Beast Snagga Boyz, as opposed to just Beast Snaggas, I do suspect that they'll likely be a troops choice like standard boys. I guess it's not impossible that they might be elites such as commandos or tank busters, but the fact that they're armed with very basic gear and they're called boys does make me think that they'll be an alternative troops choice for the Orks. In the flavour text they also mentioned that it could be a good laugh for the other Orks to see Beast Snagga Boyz harpooning giant tanks, and it's interesting that they say that the boys themselves will be doing that, as obviously this guy doesn't have any sort of harpoon weapon. I guess in theory they could be talking about those Squig Hog Riders, but because they said the Beast Snagga Boyz themselves, it does kind of imply that they might have some special weapons within the kit, such as giant harpoons. Certainly seems fairly fitting to me. As for the model himself, I think it's a really different update and reimagining of the Orc range. In particular, his torso is looking a bit bigger than standard Orcs, he's looking very muscly and brutish, and you can just tell that his war gear has a slightly cruder and more primitive feel to it, even compared with the standard boys. They all have fairly primitive weapons, I guess, but the standard boys stuff at least looks a bit more manufactured. This looks like it's been cobbled together out of bits of squigs, which I'm sure it has. Finally, they also made allusion to another unit. They told us that there's such a thing as Beast Snagga Docks, which I'm sure is what we're seeing in this picture on the Orc Cave Art painting preview that they gave us earlier. I'm going to guess he's going to have a similar function to a pain boy, putting other orcs back together. It'll be interesting to see what he can achieve with those IV line squigs, or that snipping claw that he's got. Supposedly they're just as creative as standard docks, if not more so. It'll be very interesting to see how the rest of this Beast Snagga line plays out. We know that we've got the Squig Hog Riders, there's at least one boss coming, some sort of huge squig drawn contraption, and likely more on top of this. Certainly a good time for orcs getting a ton of new and exciting miniatures. I'd say perhaps my only reservation about the existence of these new Beast Snagga Boyz is that it does seem that they're trying to create 2 different troops units that are almost exactly the same, but only different in a few tiny details. It sort of feels a little bit like the Primaris thing for Space Marines, where they have standard Space Marines, and they've released new very similar models that are just a little bit better. I think that perhaps the majority of people are just happy to have very nice new Orc models coming out, but I could perhaps see it grating a little bit, say if you did have an enormous horde of Orcs painted up already, and then all of a sudden they're the suboptimal choice compared with these new Beast Snagga Boyz, so you'd have to invest pretty heavily in them if you wanted to hold green tide of them as well. Just maybe something that crossed my mind. I'm certainly not going to go complaining about Games Workshop giving some love to the Orcs. So let me know what you think of the new news and the model. As always, I certainly look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the video comments. I'll be sure to have a good read after. Finally, if you have enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Warspets Tactics, I'll certainly keep up covering the news of Games Workshop releases, and I'll certainly be reviewing the Orc Codex and any interesting combos when it comes out. So feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see that when it drops. Finally, if you'd like to help support the channel, I'd just like to mention that I do have an Element Games affiliate link down in the video description. If you live in the UK, that can be one way to help keep these videos coming on model purchases that you were going to make anyway. Element Games is a good discount retailer. They give 10 to 20% off Games Workshop's models, and if you order after clicking the link down in the video description, a small amount of money goes to help support Auspex Tactics, and it doesn't cost you any more when you buy. There's a very similar link for Amazon in the USA and Canada as well. Again, that works just the same. Click the link, buy anything at all off Amazon, a small amount goes to help support Auspex Tactics. Can just be a few ways to help out the channel if you were going to buy something anyway. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.